Jason Kai had watched his sister die exactly 137 times. The security footage from Lab 7 played on his neural interface in crisp 8K resolution, each frame burned into his memory like a brand. Luna's laugh at 14 hours, 23 minutes, and 7 seconds. Her hand reaching for the electromagnetic pulse trigger at 14 hours, 23 minutes, and 52 seconds. The cascade failure beginning at 14 hours, 24 minutes, and 19 seconds. The explosion that vaporized her at 14 hours, 24 minutes, and 27 seconds. 87 seconds. That's how long he had between the moment she entered the lab and the moment the universe decided she was done existing. The irony wasn't lost on him that he worked for Tempo Tech, the company that pioneered regulated time displacement, and he couldn't legally use it to save the one person who mattered. The Temporal Enforcement Division had made their position crystal clear during his last 3 appeals. Personal tragedy doesn't override the collective's safety protocols. 90 seconds maximum displacement. Industrial accidents and emergency response only. No exceptions. Screw the exceptions, Jason muttered, his fingers dancing across the temporal chamber's control interface. The massive quantum resonance cylinder hummed behind him, its crystalline core pulsing with contained chronotons. He'd helped design this system, knew every failsafe, every backup protocol. More importantly, he knew how to disable them. The facility's night shift was skeleton crew, just him and a few security guards who trusted his senior engineer credentials enough not to question why he was running unauthorized diagnostics at 2 a.m. Luna used to joke that his paranoid streak would get him in trouble someday. She was right about most things. The temporal displacement field initialized with a sound like reality tearing at the seams. Jason's smartwatch chimed a warning about quantum field exposure, which he promptly ignored. According to the readout, he had approximately 12 minutes before the automated systems detected the unauthorized activation and sent alerts to TED headquarters. 12 minutes to change everything, to prove that some things mattered more than cosmic bureaucracy. He stepped into the displacement field, and the world dissolved into fractals of light. The sensation of temporal travel was like being turned inside out while falling through honey. Jason's consciousness scattered across multiple probability streams before snapping back together in Lab 7, exactly 90 seconds before Luna's death. The familiar hum of the biotech equipment filled his ears, punctuated by the software of environmental processors. Luna looked up from her workstation, her dark hair falling across her face in that way that always reminded him of their mother. She was younger here, obviously by exactly 90 seconds, but something about seeing her alive again made his chest tighten. Jason? She frowned, checking her wrist display. What are you doing here? I thought you were debugging the Portland facility's temporal core tonight. He'd rehearsed this moment during the 137 viewings, but actually standing here, seeing her breathe and move and exist, made his prepared speech evaporate. I need you to stop the experiment. Which experiment? Luna's eyebrows rose. The neural mapping project? The consciousness transfer protocol? I'm running like 6 different. The electromagnetic pulse cascade. The one you're about to trigger in. He checked his own display. 73 seconds. Luna's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Jason, that's not scheduled until next week. And how would you know about classified biotech protocols anyway? She took a step back, her hand moving instinctively toward the emergency alert button on her workstation. This was the problem with temporal intervention that every TED training manual hammered home. Changing the past required convincing people to act against their established patterns without revealing future knowledge. It was like trying to thread a needle while blindfolded and riding a roller coaster. Luna, I need you to trust me. Jason moved slowly, hands visible, trying not to trigger her flight response. Something's wrong with the cascade matrix. The quantum resonance is unstable. The cascade matrix is solid. I ran diagnostics 3 times, but doubt flickered in her eyes. Luna had always been cautious with her research, a trait their parents had drilled into both of them after their father's accident in the early biotech labs. 58 seconds. Check the electromagnetic dampener alignment, Jason said, grabbing onto the one technical detail he remembered from the accident report. Third-order harmonics. The resonance frequency is going to spike beyond containment thresholds. Luna's fingers flew across her interface, pulling up diagnostic readouts. The dampener alignment is... Her voice trailed off. That's odd. The frequency variance is higher than it should be, but still within acceptable parameters. 43 seconds. Luna, please. Jason's voice cracked despite his best efforts. Just delay the test. 24 hours. Run additional diagnostics. What's the worst that could happen? She studied his face with the intensity that had made her one of the youngest researchers ever admitted to the Galactic Biotech Consortium. You're terrified, she said finally. Not concerned. Not cautious. Terrified. Jason, what aren't you telling me? 31 seconds. The moment he opened his mouth to explain, reality hiccuped. The lab flickered, overlaying itself with an identical lab where Luna lay dead on the floor, her body charred beyond recognition. Jason blinked hard, and the death image vanished, but the metallic taste of temporal paradox filled his mouth. I can't explain, he said. Not without making things worse. But I need you to trust me the way you trusted me when we were kids, and I told you not to touch Dad's prototype neural interface. Luna's hand froze over the activation switch. The memory hit her like he'd known it would. 8-year-old Luna reaching for the shiny device. 10-year-old Jason grabbing her wrist and earning a severe grounding for his trouble. The neural interface had exploded 3 days later during calibration, taking out half their father's workshop. 18 seconds. You saved my life that day, Luna whispered. I'm trying to save it again. She pulled her hand back from the controls, and Jason felt something snap in the fabric of space-time. The paradox wave hit him like a freight train traveling at the speed of causality. Suddenly he was experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. Luna dead, Luna alive, Luna never born, Luna as an AI construct, Luna as a quantum ghost haunting the lab. His nervous system wasn't designed to process contradictory realities, but somehow he stayed conscious through the cascade of impossible possibilities. That's when the alarms started screaming. Red emergency lights bathed the lab in hellish illumination as Ted's quantum signature scanners detected the temporal anomaly. Jason's unauthorized displacement had triggered every paradox detector within a 50-kilometer radius. What the hell is happening? Luna shouted over the sirens, her instruments reading temporal energy levels that shouldn't exist outside a controlled displacement chamber. Jason grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the emergency exit. We need to go. Now. Jason, the readings are off the charts. This isn't just a cascade failure. This is a full paradox collapse. The quantum foam is destabilizing on a macro scale. He could hear the tactical transports approaching, their gravitic drives leaving ionization trails across the night sky. TED response teams deployed fast when containment protocols were breached, especially when someone violated the collective's sacred 90-second rule. Trust me one more time, Jason said as they reached the exit. Behind them, the lab equipment was beginning to phase in and out of existence as competing timelines fought for dominance. I know this looks impossible, but I also know we can survive it. Luna looked back at the chaos they were leaving behind, then at her brother's face. You've done this before. It wasn't a question. Not exactly, Jason said as the first TED agents rappelled from their transport, quantum containment weapons charged and ready. But I'm about to... Agent Rivera hit the ground running, her temporal scanner painting Jason and Luna with targeting overlays. She'd been hunting unauthorized displacement users for 6 years, ever since her own family had been lost in a sanctioned temporal accident that the collective had classified beyond her security clearance. She knew the look of someone who'd broken the 90-second rule. The haunted eyes, the desperate edge, the way reality seemed to bend around them like they were carrying pieces of other timelines in their wake. Jason Kai, she called out, her voice amplified by tactical speakers. You're in violation of Temporal Displacement Protocol 7. Surrender yourself for paradox containment. Jason turned, and Rivera saw something in his expression that made her finger hesitate on the trigger. Not guilt or fear, but a strange kind of certainty, like he was seeing something she couldn't. "Agent Rivera," he said, somehow knowing her name despite never having met her. "You lost your daughter in a temporal accident 18 months ago." The official report said cascade failure, but you never believed it. Rivera's weapon wavered. That information was classified at levels she didn't even have access to. "How do you?" "Because I'm living the paradox your daughter died to hide." The quantum containment field collapsed the moment Rivera's finger left the trigger. Around them, reality stuttered like a corrupted video file, showing glimpses of other timelines bleeding through. Agent Rivera cradling a small girl who flickered between existence and void. Luna's lab exploding in slow motion. Director Voss standing in a room that shouldn't exist, speaking to entities made of crystallized light. Rivera staggered as the temporal wake hit her. Her consciousness suddenly split between the timeline where her daughter Maya died in a sanctioned temporal accident and another where Maya never existed at all. The cognitive dissonance should have killed her instantly. Human brains weren't designed to process contradictory realities. Instead, she found herself adapting, compartmentalizing the impossible with a flexibility that surprised her. "What's happening to us?" Luna whispered, watching her own hands phase through multiple quantum states simultaneously. "Temporal paradox cascade," Jason said, his voice echoing from 3 different timeline versions of himself. "But not the kind they teach in TED training. This is something else." The bleeding timelines converged on a single location, Director Voss's private office in the Tempotech Executive Tower. Through the paradox visions, they watched conversations that had happened, were happening, and would never happen, all simultaneously true. Voss sat across from beings that hurt to look at directly. Ancient entities whose forms shifted between geometric impossibilities and pure mathematical concepts. The collective. The human shows signs of temporal consciousness evolution. One of the entities communicated in harmonics that bypassed language entirely. Her research into chaos state awareness could destabilize our containment protocols. "Luna Kai's work must be terminated," Voss replied, his voice carrying the flat effect of someone who'd made peace with necessary evils. "The electromagnetic cascade failure will appear accidental." Rivera felt her world tilt. Maya's accident hadn't been an accident. None of the temporal incidents had been accidents. "You bastards," she breathed. "You killed them all." The timeline echoes shifted, revealing deeper layers of the conversation. The humans demonstrate unprecedented adaptability to paradox states, another collective entity observed. Their emotional processing centers allow them to hold contradictory information without system failure. This presents a significant temporal threat. "How significant?" Voss asked. "If they discover their true capabilities, they could navigate temporal streams beyond our ability to monitor or control. The 90-second limitation isn't a safety measure, it's a cage." Luna laughed, a sound edged with hysteria and wonder. "They're afraid of us. These cosmic entities that regulate time across the galaxy, and they're afraid of what humans might become." The paradox visions intensified, showing them glimpses of what human temporal consciousness could achieve, navigating multiple timeline streams simultaneously, existing in quantum superposition without losing coherence, manipulating causality through pure emotional will. Abilities that other species couldn't comprehend because their minds processed reality in linear, singular streams. "Maya," Rivera whispered, understanding flooding through her. She wasn't killed because of an accident. She was killed because she inherited human temporal consciousness. Through the bleeding timelines, they saw Rivera's daughter in her final moments, trapped in a temporal loop, not dying, but existing in a state of quantum flux that the collective couldn't understand or control. She was still there, still alive in the spaces between seconds. Jason closed his eyes, reaching out with senses he'd never known he possessed, touching the quantum foam that underlay space-time itself. The paradox cascades were following patterns, emotional resonances that connected human consciousness across temporal streams. Luna's love for her research, Rivera's love for her daughter, his own desperate need to protect his sister. "I can feel them," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Every human who died in a temporal accident. They're all still there, existing in the paradox, spaces the collective can't access." The air around them began to shimmer as Jason pulled on those emotional connections, drawing the lost consciousness fragments into their current timeline. It should have been impossible. According to every law of physics he'd studied, it should have torn reality apart. Instead, reality expanded. Maya Rivera materialized first, a 6-year-old girl with her mother's eyes and a smile that existed in 17 different quantum states simultaneously. She was older and younger, dead and alive, human and something transcendent. "Mommy," she said in a voice that echoed across multiple timelines, "I've been waiting for you to figure out how to find me." Rivera dropped her weapon and embraced a daughter who was somehow more real than reality itself. The Tempotech facility's walls began to phase as the expanding paradox field reached critical mass. Through the quantum static, they could see Director Voss and his collective handlers scrambling to implement emergency containment protocols. "The humans have achieved temporal coherence." One of the entities transmitted, its mathematical form flickering with what might have been panic. "This cannot be permitted." Voss activated a massive temporal stabilization array designed to collapse all paradox states within a 50-kilometer radius. It would kill everyone caught in the temporal anomaly, but it would also erase the evidence of humanity's true capabilities. "Not today," Luna said, her biotech expertise finally understanding what her research had been pointing toward all along. Human consciousness wasn't limited by the linear causality that constrained other species. They could exist in multiple states simultaneously, hold contradictory truths without losing coherence. She reached out through the quantum foam, touching every human consciousness within the temporal field, awakening abilities that had been suppressed by artificial limitations and fear. Jason felt it too, the moment when their species stepped beyond the cage that had been built around them. The stabilization array exploded in a cascade of chronotons and shattered possibility. Voss stared in horror as his collective allies began retreating from Earth's temporal space, their forms dissolving back into the higher dimensions they inhabited. "This planet is quarantined," their final transmission echoed across space and time. "The humans have achieved temporal independence. They are beyond our ability to contain." Jason stood in the ruins of the Tempotech facility, Luna alive and impossible beside him, Rivera holding a daughter who existed in quantum superposition. The 90-second rule was revealed for what it had always been, not a safety measure, but a leash designed to keep humanity from discovering their true nature. "So what now?" Rivera asked, still holding Maya close. Jason looked up at the stars, where alien civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were suddenly faced with a species they couldn't understand or control. Humans who could navigate time like other species navigated space, who could exist in paradox states that would drive other minds to madness. "Now we explore," he said, feeling the quantum foam respond to his emotional will, showing him glimpses of temporal streams that stretched across centuries and possibilities. "Now we find out what humanity can really become when we stop asking permission to exist." Luna laughed, the sound rippling across multiple timelines simultaneously. The collective spent so much effort trying to contain human temporal evolution that they never considered what would happen if we learned to contain ourselves. In the distance, temporal enforcement transports were arriving from across the globe, not to arrest them, but to join them. Humanity was awakening to its temporal heritage, and no force in the galaxy could stop what they were becoming. Jason reached for Luna's hand, solid and real and alive, existing in perfect paradox with the timeline where she had died. Some things, he realized, were worth changing the universe for, and some species were strong enough to handle the consequences.